Welcome to the Your Child is Your Guide podcast, where we come together and level up in our ability to shift from feeling victims of parenthood to empowered creators experiencing more connection and peace in parenthood. All things empowered and peaceful parenting in bite-sized chunks so it is easily digested for even the busiest parent. The intention behind this podcast is to provide support that leads to reduced overwhelm, spanking, screaming, chronic negative self-talk, mom guilt, shame, and feeling victim to parenthood and our children's behavior. The intention of this podcast and its episodes is to deconstruct many of the generational thought patterns and cycles in a simple way that leads to us all leaving each episode feeling more free, empowered, and able to handle whatever life throws our way moving forward. I am your host, Michelle Bowen, author of 2 books, Your Child is Your Guide and Super Practical, Peaceful, and Empowered Parenting. I'm a mother to a 9-year-old little lady, and I'm a parent empowerment coach. So let's get into it. In previous episodes, we've discussed that we are on the same team as our children, or at least some of us are choosing to parent from that concept, right? That we are on the same team as our children. And also that loving our children does not equal spoiling them. Today, I want to speak a little bit about how setting the intention to parent peacefully is very humbling. We're not setting the intention to be peaceful parents or to parent from our peace to boost our ego. It's actually quite the opposite. Through setting the intention to parent peacefully, we actually become way more aware of our ego or of the patterns and habits that we have learned that are no longer serving the type of life and relationships with ourselves and our children that we want to create. So sometimes it's pretty easy to get lost in seeing the intention to parent consciously or from our peace as something we're doing to be better people or to be a good parent. But actually, you're already amazing. You've been amazing since the moment you came out of your mother's womb. There's nothing that you can really do to take away from or add to that amazingness, contrary to what the world would have you believe. You came out of your mother's womb and you started to learn habits and patterns and ways of using language. You started to learn language, and then based on your environment and the society, you started to learn how to use that language. But all that you've learned from the moment that you were born is simply just that, concepts and ways of being that you've been programmed and conditioned with, that you've learned, that you were taught. None of it determines your worth or your value or determines whether you're a good person or a bad person. All of it is patterns that when you were a child and a teen, you may have unconsciously copied and mimicked because it's what you knew, it's what you were being taught on TV, in movies, and everywhere else, in family dynamics. So all of it are patterns and programs that you were taught and conditioned with. And as you got older and started to wake up to the desire to make different choices, you realize that some of those patterns and habits do not feel good to you and are not patterns and habits that you would have raised your hand to choose willingly. Now, you making new choices doesn't mean you're a better person than anyone else. It just means that you've woken up to the ability to choose and to make new choices. Similarly, when we made choices in the past that seemed very shitty and ridiculous, but were simply due to how we were programmed after we were born, those choices that we made do not take away from our amazingness, our awesomeness, our divinity, the love and peace, the light that we are at our core. It just means that we were asleep to being able to make higher choices. It just means that we were mimicking our society, our culture, our environment. So see, your worth and your value actually has never been up for debate. It's never been about, oh, you're a bad person, now you're becoming a good person. You've always been love, beautiful, amazing, radiant. It's just we've either been acting unconsciously based on how we are programmed, or we have decided to practice getting more skilled at using our gift of choice, of deciding, of choosing, regardless of what other people think about our choices. Choosing to follow what resonates and feels true for us, regardless of what other people have to say about it. Okay? So when you choose to start parenting from the idea that you are on the same team as your child and that peace and love is all that matters to you, giving that to your child, speaking to them peacefully, speaking to yourself peacefully. When you set the intention to make peace and love and the clarity that comes with that your priority, and when you start to see that loving your child, or to give yourself permission to see that extending love to your child in moments that maybe it was not consistently extended to you, when you give yourself permission to see that that is not spoiling your child, and when you give yourself permission to set the intention to parent peacefully to the best of your ability, other people might have something to say about that, especially if they're not practicing that. But your life is no one else's life to live. Not only will other people have something to say about those choices that you dare to make, there might be a lot of pushback that you experience within your own self, right? You might have a lot of the programmed thoughts that you assume or other people would have to say about what you're choosing to do that arise within you. And you might experience that battle between following your heart and doing what feels best to you and activating your gift of choosing to do what feels resonant with you. You might have that battle between your heart and your mind and your programming and what your mom might say about what you're choosing and what your aunt might say about what you're choosing and what your cousins might think about what you're choosing and what Jane down the street might have to say about what you're doing. So when you set the intention to parent from your peace, we're not doing it to become better or to boost our ego. Actually, it can feel like an extremely difficult, one of the most difficult choices in your life to parent consciously, aka from being awake, aware of your energy, aware of the thoughts and emotions that arise within you, aware of your ability to choose how you show up. When we set the intention to parent consciously and peacefully, it's not to boost the ego, but it definitely can cause a lot of our egoic patterns and tendencies and fears to come up to the surface, because we got to be more aware of those in order for us to actually be able to choose to parent peacefully moment to moment, or to choose peace within ourselves moment to moment. We simultaneously have to be willing to see all of the thoughts and beliefs and patterns that we had been choosing by default before we took making these choices into our own hands, right? And in this way, setting the intention to parent peacefully can be extremely humbling, because it's not all rainbows and daisies. It's going to make you sit with and accept and forgive yourself for even all of the times in the past that how we were programmed and conditioned was running the show. A very huge component to parenting from our peace consistently is being able to accept our past, to grab the wisdom we gained from it, and to let go of it. Where a lot of us have instead been programmed and conditioned to feel guilt and shame about the actions and the words that came through us when we were not choosing how we wanted to show up in parenthood or in general, right? So it can be very humbling to have that, set that intention to parent from your peace and consciously, because it puts you in a position to face everything that is in alignment with that choice, but also everything that's not. When the desire to parent from our peace is activated, there's a lot of stuff that we may have suppressed, that we may have done in the past, that we may, feel a lot of shame and guilt for, and that we just refused in the past to look at. We were like, it happened 5 years ago, it happened 10 years ago, whatever. And we just suppress it, right? It comes up here and there by, intrusive thoughts about it and fear and, little anxiety. Sometimes it pops up sometimes, but we just keep stuffing it down, stuffing it away. But when we set this intention to parent from our peace and to parent more consciously, we start to give ourselves more and more permission to look at everything that comes up and to sit with it, forgive the past, let it go, and we start to say goodbye to suppressing. We start to fall in love with looking at all of it and just forgiving all of it and letting it all go and giving ourselves permission to grab what we learned from it and to take what we learned and the lesson we learned and move on with that lesson. We want to use the wisdom we gained from it, but we give ourselves permission to release some of those painful memories, some of those memories that seem to haunt us because we haven't really sat with it and forgiven ourselves or others. And why is that so powerful and crucial when it comes down to parenting from our peace consistently? It's powerful because the stuff that we think we're suppressing and the stuff that we think we're sweeping under the rug that tends to come up from time to time isn't really being swept under any rug. The energy from it affects the way that we respond and react to our children, especially if we're not sitting with it and practicing the art of processing it. So, setting the intention to peacefully parent and to consciously parent is not to boost our ego or because we're trying to be better people or better parents. You're already freaking amazing. You always have been. It's actually quite the opposite, because it's helping us to become more aware of our intentions and what we want more of in our relationship with our children and with ourselves. But also we're having to come face to face with, accept, and forgive many of the concepts, ideas, and fears and past stories that we may have suppressed for a very long time. The patterns, the habits that we no longer resonate with, but due to having learned them as a child and teen from our environment, we have to face that we may have taken part in those behaviors, face what used to be shame and guilt, face it with the awareness that I learned these patterns. I forgive myself for doing X, Y, Z. I let it go, and I am powerfully choosing to do this moving forward. And also the humility of having to do that over and over and over again, because this doesn't really happen overnight for most of us. Shifting from parenting from your programming and how you've been conditioned to parent, to parenting from your peace, and to parenting in consciously, moment to moment, consistently, utilizing the gift that's been activated within you, that's the gift of choosing, deciding how you want to show up moment to moment in your responses towards your child and towards yourself. For many of us, that shift does not occur overnight. It did not occur overnight for me. Oftentimes it takes a lot of falling down and getting back up, falling off the wagon and giving yourself permission to practice self-forgiveness and strengthen that self-forgiveness muscle, right? Practicing not caring what other people think. All of this sounds like simple practices, but it's really not when you really take a look around and you realize that the majority care very deeply about what other people think. The majority really find it difficult to empower themselves, right? But when we set this intention to parent consciously and peacefully, these are skills that we start to practice more and more every day and get more and more skilled at every day. Because practicing them helps us to be able to extend that forgiveness and compassion and empowerment towards our children, right? Not to be the parent of the year, but simply because you and your child deserve peace in your home. Peace also happens to be what we want on a global front, right? We want global peace. We want world peace. But we can't keep wanting world peace if we're not at least committing to cultivating that in our homes, okay? The world is worthy of peace. You are worthy of peace. We can't really snap our finger and have world peace if we haven't even cultivated, the ability to be at peace within ourselves and to extend that peace to the few people that are in our homes. So we start there. We start there with simple, practical, intentional action steps, and just really giving ourselves permission to do less of the energetically draining things that we have a pattern or a habit of doing, right? Screaming, spanking, those are energetically draining. Power struggles, energetically draining. Judging ourselves and condemning ourselves, energetically draining. The less that we do these things, the more energy we have, the more peace and joy and love we feel, right? The less that we're partaking in those particular behaviors, right? Doing something we don't want to do, saying yes when we feel no and no when we feel yes, that's energetically draining, right? And when we give ourselves permission to do less of that, more peace, right? More love, giving ourselves permission to be aware of the negative thought forms that we're experiencing, giving ourselves permission to be aware of them instead of identifying with them, instead of letting those thought forms and the energy that accompanies them hijack our bodies in a way. We're just being aware of them. We're like, oh, hey, negative thought, I see you. I see you, and yes, I have let you run the show numerous times in my past, but not today. I see you. The more we give ourselves permission to look at these negative thoughts that appear throughout the day and just practice being more aware of that inner landscape, the less we identify with it, and the more you identify as the love, light, and peace that you naturally are, and you're able to choose how you want to respond and what thoughts you want to think about XYZ, right? So setting the intention to parent peacefully is not at all really about being mom of the year, parent of the year, none of that. It's really about, some of us really started to take peace very seriously when we became parents. We had many opportunities to do so before, but many of us started to take it very, very seriously because it's almost like there was an activation, a realization that occurred where it's like, I know I'm here to love you. I know I'm here to support you, child. I know I'm here to guide you. But damn it, you've helped me see that in order for me to really do that, there's a lot within myself that needs to be looked at. A lot of patterns and habits that I've been programmed and conditioned with that are going to have to dissolve. There's a lot of love and peace and compassion and forgiveness I'm going to have to give to myself before I'm able to fully show up for you the way that I can feel down in my depths that I'm meant to show up for you. And so oftentimes, the child is the guide because the triggers and whatnot that occur in parenthood are showing us our blind spots and showing us where we are still choosing fear and force, and where our programming and conditioning are still taking over, and our opportunities for us to replace those with love, new patterns and new habits that resonate with who we are at our core. So oftentimes the child is the guide because they are showing us our blind spots, where we are still seeing separation instead of the awareness that we are on the same team with our children. And then as we continue to utilize the parent-child dynamic in a way where we are willing to look at those blind spots, we also become their guide because we're able to show up the way that we choose to versus where our programming and conditioning was taking over. Parenthood is helping us make the unconscious conscious. Parenthood is helping us to remember that we are choosers. And many of us are very done with being chosen for, done with letting anger, rage, separation consciousness, victim consciousness, fear. Some of us are done with letting those energies choose how we respond and react to life. And parenthood is just giving us many opportunities to practice choosing love, to practice choosing joy, to practice choosing to follow our heart and our resonance moment to moment instead of what we've been told or programmed to follow. Not to be better people, not to boost our ego, but because you deserve to live the remainder of your life from peace as much as you can and with access to the infinite intelligence that is within you. And you deserve and are worthy of not needing anything outside of you to feel rejuvenated, replenished, energized, not needing likes, comments, validation from parents to feel energized, replenished, rejuvenated. You are worthy of choosing peace and love and to follow your resonance and to create what lights you up and to give your time and attention to what lights you up and to parent your child in a way that lights you up and leaves you feeling more connected to them and to yourself. You are worthy of that. You don't have to earn it. You are worthy of it. And setting the intention to parent peacefully and consciously is one of the ways that you start to give that to yourself. Just having that intention, a lot of things start to come into place and opportunities start to show up, and the right books and the right YouTubes that support you in that start to show up once you just make that commitment. And the more devoted you are to that intention of parenting from your heart and from your peace, the more naturally your parenting style, your unique parenting style gets created through you. And you are worthy of that. And it can feel hard sometimes, especially if you were not raised that way. It can feel hard sometimes, especially if you are attempting to merge conscious and peaceful living with parenthood and you're a single parent. There are certain things, certain aspects of our path that can make this feel very difficult, very hard. Just remember that something that feels difficult and hard gets easier with practice, okay? So the mind can say, and our programming can say, we're not on the same team as our children. I am my child's parent. That is my child. I'm not their friend. A lot of us have been programmed and conditioned to think that way. Sit with that. Does that resonate with you? If it does, okay. If it doesn't, then it is not relevant for how you are here to show up with your child. And that's just really cool to know. Like, honor your resonance. There's no right or wrong with this. We're not here to agree with each other 100%. You just deserve to be aware of what feels true for you and what doesn't. So the mind will say, due to our programming collectively, many of us, I'm not on the same team as my child. That is a little girl. Look at her. She better listen to me. I am not her friend. Talk to her peacefully. She better listen to me no matter how I talk to her, right? We've been programmed and conditioned, some of us, to operate that way. Does that resonate with you? That's all you have to worry about. Or does it resonate to be aware that we are on the same team with our child and that we are co-creating a life together for the time that we are living together? So her wants, her desires, her needs are equally as important as mine. Her voice is equally as worthy of being heard as mine. Space is equally as worthy of being held for her emotions, and when she's triggered, just as much as it's important for me to hold space for my triggers and my emotions. Which one resonates? No right or wrong. Just give yourself permission to get honest with that. Not my friend, my child, and she needs to listen. Whether I'm spanking, screaming, or yelling, or flipping out, she needs to, it doesn't matter because that's not my friend. That's just my child. Or we are on the same team as our children. Get very clear on which of those resonates with you most. Another one, the mind will say, loving your child, picking them up when they're crying in the crib, giving your child a hug when they're crying at home because they stubbed their toe on something, or crying, giving your child a hug when they start crying because of a conversation you're having with them and they got emotional and triggered and they started crying, hugging them in that moment, that's spoiling them. Letting them ask for what they want, letting them vocalize what they want, that's spoiling them. Not spanking them, speaking to them peacefully, that's spoiling them. Not screaming at them, attempting to speak to them peacefully, that's spoiling them. Does that resonate? If it does, that's okay. If it doesn't, then it is not relevant for you in this lifetime, at this moment at least, to operate that way. And you are free to give yourself permission to hug them, to hold them, to pick them up out the crib, to know that loving them is actually strengthening them, that loving them does not spoil them. Love does not spoil, it empowers, it uplifts. You are free to parent in a way that resonates with you, okay? The mind will say, oh, you're just trying to parent peacefully and be conscious parent because you're just trying to be better than other people. You're just trying to show out and be better than this person and that parent, this person and that person. You're just trying to be better than other people. That's why you're just trying to be special. That's why you're trying to do this. Does that resonate? If it does, okay. But if it doesn't, you are free right now to give yourself permission to acknowledge that you are setting the intention to parent peacefully and consciously because you are aware that your child deserves that type of home environment and that type of connection, and that the child within you and you deserve that type of environment and that type of connection as well. So the mind will say all types of stuff based on how we've been programmed and conditioned, our fears, etc. We are being invited through this message to pay less attention to the programmed thought patterns and the fears, and to pay more attention to what resonates and what doesn't, and to give ourselves more permission to follow that resonance. So past programming may have taught me or programmed me to think and believe that attempting to parent from my peace or attempting to consciously or empowered to parent consciously was egoic and simply something that I was attempting to do to be a better person or to be better than others. But actually, I am attempting to parent from my peace, and I am setting the intention to parent from my peace because my child is worthy of a peaceful home environment and of being raised with the intelligence and clarity that is available when her parent is experiencing peace within. And the child within me is also worthy of that peace and that love. We all are. And I am free to parent from my heart and to create my own life and parenting style that feels true for me. I am looking forward to being with you guys in the next bite-sized, empowered, and peaceful parenting episode. Bye.